It's 5. We're live. It's Thursday. Welcome to Frankly Speaking. I'm Joe Spina along with Paul Crowley. I missed you last week, Paul.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fireworks from last week.
Apparently, yeah, and we're going to get to it. But first of all, I want to thank the folks out there. Paul, I don't know whether you heard this. Number one, Lynn Cable TV has won national awards.
Right, for the Beyond Walls
Coverage, right? Oh, well, that was a great thing to start with. Right. So we want to get that out to you, and also we want to thank you for making us the number one watched cable show on the North Shore, Paul.
Yeah.
I hope we go further than just the North Shore.
Absolutely. I bet you we're the best call-in show. We're the best live show.
You think?
And we're the most entertaining.
Well, we're for an award. We'll find out, won't we?
Most entertaining, for sure.
Anyway, I never hear 781-780-9460. And well, let's get to Frankly Joe. Paul, we got a lot to talk about today. Last week, you weren't here. Last week, Gina asked the critical question, what has been done to balance Lynn's budget? To which Joe, not this Joe, responded, even with the state loan, the city, that means Lynn, is $7 million in the red come July 1st, fiscal year. That's amazing, isn't it? The items Tom Grillo picked up on this and did some digging, and he did.
What did he find out?
He watched the show.
No, but I mean, what did he find out about the $7 million?
Well, it appears, as he reported, that the once purported $8 million surplus has evaporated. Lynn now is in the hole for about $7 million, allegedly. That's a $15 million swing that opens up a huge budget gap, Paul.
Right.
To which finger pointing now is happening, or no comments, or, the usual buck passing.
Right.
So, I don't know. I mean, if that's the case, we have a serious problem.
So, my first thought is, is it actually a $15 million swing? I'm not sure that is correct.
But what if it is?
Remember, the city was given a $14 million line of credit.
That's right. And
the premise was that they would need that to balance the budget for 2 consecutive years.
8 this year and...
Right.
Yeah.
So if they spent all 14 and they're still 7 short, they're also 8 short for next year, which is...
I got you.
I mean, it can be bigger.
That's the problem.
And then I heard that it was just because of healthcare, and I can't believe that's true.
Well, you weren't here last week. There's another thing I pointed out last week that really caught me. Because at the city council meeting last week, they approved a $5.8 million renovation money for the Hood School. Now, whether the Hood School needs it or not, I'm not going to argue that point. The point is, can we afford it? Now, they say,
so they're borrowing even more money.
That's right. But they're claiming up to, the word is up to 80%. Remember, up to 80% for Thurgood Marshall. And basically, it wasn't... It
wasn't $18 million, it was
supposed to be $18 million, it came to 40 or 50. So they're saying that there's up to $5.8 million is the total package, but it's only going to be about 20% for us. The city of Lynn, which is $1.2 million, right?
Okay, so let's talk about...
Where are we going to get the $1.2 million? So SEA said last week, well, we're going to bond it. See, once they took away that bonding ability, that cap on bonding, I'm a little concerned. You were concerned about that.
Yeah, well, see, they're going to bond $5.6 million because...
5.8.
Whatever the total cost of the project is.
Right, and try to get the money back.
Right, but what they do is they... aside from the nuances of it, they essentially pay 20% and the state pays 80%. And it ends up being more than 20 because of things that aren't includable and all that kind of stuff.
Go ahead.
So they bond the whole 5.8, but then they get reimbursed for, let's say, 80%.
Maybe.
No, well, I mean, they
Maybe. That didn't happen with the Thurgood Marshall Middle School, Paul. We were sold a bill of goods that wasn't accurate.
Well, they will be getting reambused. It won't
That's
be,
true.
And it won't be exactly 80%. But
So
they will be getting
the
a reimbursement.
Who pays the difference?
The city. So the net effect of the bonding is the city's end of it, and it's going to be at a minimum 20%, more likely something on the order of 30 or 40%. But keep in mind that the difference between a renovation versus a brand new school. In the brand new school, you have to pay 100% of the acquisition costs and all of this field study work and all that kind of stuff. That's not going to apply to a renovation because they already have.
However, Paul, there's another issue involved here, and it's what happened. How can we turn around as a city that has financial problems, spend money?
They were so quick to spend it. Well, let's get back to the health insurance thing because.
Well, we haven't got to there yet.
Well, no, the frankly
well,
Joe.
It's not necessarily. I think that's what it is.
So here's what.
So
I want to say two things first. First of all, generally speaking, if there is a deficit related to the health insurance of $7 or $15 million or something like
whatever
that,
it is,
and A, the city wasn't aware of that, and B, the state didn't pick up on it, and C, the independent auditors that looked at it and made recommendations to the previous administration didn't pick on it. I wonder who's watching the books? I mean, there's something seriously wrong with that.
We're talking about three different invested interests at three
and
different
nobody
levels.
saw it.
Well, you buy that?
Well, I don't know. So that's one thing. The other thing is one of the reasons that I switched my position on this from opposing the city doing this to the $14 million bond to approving it was because they talked about doing a number of things in addition to raising taxes. One was they were going to do some significant expense. They're going to look at the cost side of things, not just the revenue side of things. And one of the things they were going to do is they were going to look at healthcare costs. They were going to restructure it. They were going to make the employees pay a greater percentage of the.
Let's slow down for a second.
No, I got to get this off my chest because it's bothering me.
Go ahead.
So, and the mayor said it. Darren said it. They both said we're working on adjusting the sharing between the employees and the employer, right? And it was going to take them some time to figure it out. I heard 18 months before they were going to come to a conclusion on this. Now, if that's the case, that was the position that they took when they were getting everybody to say thumbs up, right? And now all of a sudden they're talking about, in addition to the fact that they have not even addressed that piece of it, on top of it they have a $7 million deficit or a $15 million deficit. There's something seriously wrong here, and either we're getting our facts are wrong, or there is a serious, and this is no longer about getting the state to bond $14 million and have a quasi-receivership thing. This is full-blown receivership, if that's the case. I really wish Darren would say it so we could find out more about what's going on here. Very scary stuff.
Well, on that point, Paul, let me ask you this. The health care costs were supposed to have been taken care of by this wonderful thing called the Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. Since that has been passed, we've had some very serious problems paying for the insurance. That's number one.
The Affordable Care Act wasn't supposed to reduce the cost of health insurance.
What was it supposed to do, Paul?
It was supposed to make sure everybody was insured.
Was that what it was? Was sold on that basis, or was it sold on that?
Well, they made the argument that that premiums were going to go down as a result.
That's what I'm saying. But they didn't, did they?
No.
All right. So it was a false predicate.
Yes.
All right. Let's go one step further. Do you know what's happening in the state of California now, and Illinois, and all of these blue states? You know what's happening?
Their unfunded liabilities are exploding out of control.
No. Do you know what's happening revenue-wise in those states? They're pulling in far more money than they ever anticipated because of what what Trump has done economically. Those states that screaming and yelling about Trump and his economy are reaping benefits like you can't believe. He's covering a lot of their losses.
Right.
Did you know that?
Yeah, and the states are in the media aren't going to.
They're not going to report it. And I say it. So my point to you is, by extension, by extrapolation, the city of Lynn should be a beneficiary. Because the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is a beneficiary, they're going to get more revenue than they anticipated. Everybody is.
So their sales tax revenue will go up, but their real estate tax revenue will not expand the way income taxes expand.
Let me go to that quickly, and then I want to move the show through a fast segment, and then we're going to come right back, folks, to the budget, which is serious. And you're absolutely right, Paul. I read, and I don't know about you folks out there, and Paul, you spoke eloquently about this because you understood this. They're saying that we have a problem with homeowners in this country being underwater. And if that's the case, that's what they're reporting. Bloomberg reported it.
I would say that there are probably some people that are still underwater.
No, they're talking about.
But it's not like it was in 09 or 08.
Well, it's going up. It's up to around 13%. Okay, at one point it was
13% of homeowners
nationally
do not have a
underwater,
have a loan to value ratio that's greater than 100%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I don't know if this is accurate, Paul. I'm saying that Bloomberg. I read the article. The argument was, why are people who are underwater? What's the number one reason why they pay their mortgage instead of walking away like they did back in 2008, right? I mean 2008. And the reason is they like their homes. They want to stay there.
Well, I'm not exactly sure about all of that stuff. Let me just say a couple things.
Yeah.
First of all, when somebody had a $300,000 mortgage on a house that was only worth $200,000, I'm just going to throw out round numbers. They didn't stay. I don't think they stayed because they liked the home, because they still had to pay the mortgage. The only way they were staying is if they were staying as a squatter, where they didn't pay the mortgage, it got foreclosed upon, and they just stayed there. That was the. There was no.
What they did was they asked why it was that people were paying their mortgage even though they were underwater instead of walking away.
Right.
That's a different set of circumstances.
Right.
And the number one answer, which about 75% of them responded that they liked their house.
Okay.
They didn't want to move.
Well, and I can tell you that I have a friend of mine who lived here in Lynn. He doesn't live here anymore, but he lived in Lynn back in the the early 2000s, and he. How did it go? So he paid, like $175 for a 3-family. At one point, the market collapsed, and this wasn't 2000, or maybe it was 2007. So the market collapsed in 2007. He stays there, continues to pay the mortgage, even though it's underwater,
right?
Because he was living in it, and the market cycle changed, and the property value went back up. He ended up selling it for $400,000.
So
and then he moved to Danvers. So my point is, if it's a home you live in, the established value of it on any given day is really irrelevant. The key is, can you afford the mortgage?
Well, the point of the matter is, obviously you can afford the mortgage, even though the value went down. That's the whole point.
Right.
So if a person is accustomed to paying $1,500 a month,
right,
it's irrelevant.
The only thing that really matters is what's
except for one thing.
Is their income
except for one thing? If they get real estate taxed out of business.
Right. But when the values are declining, typically people's real estate taxes at a minimum stay flat. They don't really go up. Not substantially anyway.
Those are shell games. Our number here is 780-946. So we're going to get to some of our, I'm trying to take what, on Facebook, what people have to say about our show.
Did you say that we hit the magic 200 in terms of Facebook likes?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool,
huh? Yeah, we're moving like the wind. But we only have about a minute before a break, a couple of minutes of the break. So let me get this started. Tom Fenton, one of our loyal viewers, and he makes a good point, and he says that Boston has swan boats. Why do we not? When I was a young guy, whatever, is you could rent boats on Flax Pond. Why not now? And I say, it's a pretty interesting idea, and it's civic, it's a good thing. And I say, why not have a little more imagination, Paul? And what about Lynn Shore Tours? You like that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. And instead of the ferry, put a boat out there, go around, people would love that, I think. So Tom is a Tim, isn't it?
Tim Fenton.
Yeah. Well, Tim, that's a great idea. We get the nice little boats on Flax Pond and hopefully Sluice Pond. And if we ever build an inlet to the sea, they can float down there. But God, I think that would bring a lot of spirit and people coming to Lynn and be a fun thing. And also, we use the harbor for sightseeing. You can go around Nahant to Boston and around Revere.
Go up into Swampscott and Marblehead and all that area.
Sure, it would be a lot of fun. So think about that. Now we got a minute left. So Paul, what do you think of that idea?
I like it. There's got to be, the premise is that we have this beautiful shoreline, a lot of what's going on, a lot of the requirements around developing on the waterfront is to create water uses for the waterfront property. So, doing that, and then you talk about a ferry that, has, is frustrated because it doesn't get enough ridership. So do the tours as an augment, right?
Absolutely. You combine it. Very good, Paul. You can use it to ferry people to Boston back and forth, and in between, to make it economically sound, you can have these little day trips and here, there, and everywhere, and take your family with you. I mean, I think it'd be a great thing.
Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah. Don't go out too far. Don't go to that whale watching stuff because I get seasick. Once I don't see land, I'm in trouble.
Well, I like to be firmly planted on the ground. So
Me too.
Yeah.
We're going to go to a break. We're firmly planted on the ground here.
You've always protected me. Every day of my life.
There you go.
Thanks, Dad.
I'm older now, but I still need you. Prescription pain pills, heroin. I know kids are getting addicted, and people are dying. Can you still protect me?
You can protect your teen. Teens who talk to their parents about opioids are less likely to misuse them. Find out what you can say.
I was 18 years old. I had it made. Until I went to a college party, and I thought I was immune to temptation. That's when reality struck. Quite literally. If you choose to slowly end your liver, don't let it be your life that ends early. Be responsible.
So, Larry McCulley, who's Larry McCulley, he used to be over at Salem State College. He was trustee over there, and terrific guy. Watches the show, see him a lot. And here's what he said, and this is interesting. It's a direct quote. He said, I liked Buzzy Barton's comment in the paper a while back about wanting to see more breaking ground shovels than those announcements. That's a hell of a point. And there's a lot of announcements, but no shovels are digging in the ground.
So when I was on the city council, what I noticed was for anything that was positive for the city, there was always like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or maybe even 10 opportunities for the politicians to take credit for it. So what they would do is they'd have a ribbon cutting for the announcement that they were going to do a waterfront master plan. Then they would get the consultant in, and then they would have a ribbon cutting, and I call it ribbon cutting, but just basically an event to talk about how they got this consultant in to do the waterfront master plan. And you go all the way through it till the very end, and they say, and now we have a waterfront master plan. That's press release number 10, right? And what did we get? We didn't get the Linway developed. We just got to a point now where we can start thinking about development.
Isn't that what Buzzy's talking about?
Buzzy's saying that's what Larry's talking about.
But he's quoting Buzzy. And what he's saying, in effect, is Buzzy was saying it like it was. All credit to him. And Buzzy's simply saying, very simply, to the point which that's what you gotta love about Buzzy. He doesn't play games.
Yep.
He's saying, hey, look, forget about all these announcements that you're going to do this, and that. Why don't you just do it?
Right. That's the point. Another example was the ferry. Remember Seth Moulton got us $4.5 million to buy a ferry?
Supposedly.
They're not going to ever buy the ferry unless we have a strategic plan that's going to work to use the ferry.
But he gets credit for it.
But he didn't. But we don't have it.
I know that. But
right. So he got credit for saying he was going to go get it. Yeah. He got credit for them saying that if you put together all these things, we'll give it to you. But he never got it. But he got credit for it twice, and we still haven't got a ferry.
Sometimes I'd like to run against that guy, folks. Here's my pledge. You don't have to worry about term limits with me. That's number one. I won't live long enough. That's right.
Yeah, there you go.
Number two, I have no ambition to go further. And plus, I would vote not to impeach, and I would vote to build a wall, which is against both of those things, and I vote against sanctuary cities.
Right. Wouldn't it be cool if we started doing polls? Do you think we could actually do polls on our, not scientific polls, but just kind of poll our audience and on Facebook and have like a question like, do you prefer a wall or not?
I like that.
Let's start asking our audience. See if we can get a read on the city of Lynn. Because don't you think that Seth Moulton should understand what the needs of his constituents are or what the wants of his constituents are, as opposed to what Nancy Pelosi wants?
Nancy Pelosi likes MS-13, Paul.
Right. So my point is very simple. If Seth Moulton is really going to represent us, what we should be doing is telling him what us really wants.
Well, he's going to tell us that we don't really know what we want and that he knows better than we know. That's what Hillary Clinton said.
So let's talk to Pedro and Dave after the show about the idea of doing some non-scientific polls. And so
Why is it non-scientific, Paul?
Well, because
I mean, most things are non-scientific, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't want to put too much stock in something where
do.
people can put in multiple votes and one way or another.
Here's the whole thing. The beneficiary of building a wall is the city of Lynn. Because, number one, it would curb the influx of students that we're getting left and right from Central America. It's number one. Secondly, it would do a great job of slowing down the fentanyl that's killing everybody coming to the city of Lynn.
Right. So Lynn, yeah, you're right. Lynn becomes a big beneficiary.
Not saying it's the cure to the problem. We're saying it abates it.
Right. Right. You said it's like at least the rain stops so the ground can absorb the water.
Precisely.
Right.
Ralph. You know Ralph? Ralph says, if we can get this up, Pedro, Ralph says that the city has an obsession with housing development and think that is a way to building a new Lynn. Sure, we need housing, but we need, and he puts need jobs, exclaims it also. Does Ralph have a point? We have a caller. Caller, what do you think? Welcome. Hello? Do we have a caller there? Hi, how are you?
Good.
You have a question? You have a comment?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. It seems to me the biggest problem is the schools. And I can't stand injustice. But anyone for injustice, raise your hand. I'm sure everybody is against it. But it seems to me to be very simple and down to earth. The big problem, Marblehead, Swampscott, Nahant have about 0 new people coming in for their schools. Saugus maybe has 5 or 10. Lynn has thousands. Now, if we're one big happy family, whether federally or statewide or citywide, can people see this and know the predicament the city is in? And here's the 2 questions I have. The first one is everyone should get on their knees and be thankful to the Catholic Church. If we ever had to close any more schools, Sacred Heart, St. Pius, St. Mary's, I don't know if St. Joseph's is still open. But here's my first question. How badly did it affect the city when St. Michael's and St. Jean's and St. Patrick's closed? All those students were thrown onto the city, I think. And in the parochial schools, there's, thanks to the Bleeding Hearts, there's no recompense from the city, not a penny. So they have to do it all on their own. So do you know how many are closing? Now, what if they close those schools I just mentioned? That'd all fall back on the city. There's what my first question. The second one, and then I'll hang up, is more immigrants than Lynn has been getting is Revere and Chelsea. Now, how are they making it? Why don't our counselors talk to them and say, how are you handling the school problem with all of the immigration that are coming in?
Okay, so thanks for your call. And by the way, that's insightful.
Yeah, so there's a couple of interesting things. Let me take the last question first. And I'm not so sure that Chelsea and Revere, first of all, have the problem as bad as we do. I think the problem in Lynn with the unaccompanied minors and the growth in the school population, it's not. They have it too, but I don't think it's nearly as
I think
significant.
Chelsea, proportion to population, was more severe than Lynn.
Is it?
Oh, absolutely.
In terms of unaccompanied minors coming into the school system?
We're talking about the demographics, not necessarily.
No, I'm talking about, you know how you've said that 20% of our...
I think the Chelsea school system went bankrupt, we went receivership.
That was many years ago, though.
But wait a second, Chelsea turned it around. Chelsea's the most densely populated city in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, okay? With not too many attributes. Yet they turned it around.
Right.
Same thing with Revere. Revere has a higher bond rating than we do.
Right.
Much higher.
So I'll stand corrected and basically say that. So in comparing what Lynn does to what Revere does and Chelsea does to deal with the significant influx of students, I think you do what you can, the best you can. I'm not sure that there's going to be any silver bullet, but I will tell you that. Wait a minute.
Okay.
So there's no silver bullet to solve the. You have to fund it because of the requirements and all that kind of stuff. But the real opportunity is, just like you said, slow the influx of more people into the community.
We have to take a pause from both legal and illegal immigration. Both, not one, both.
Right.
And we have to take the chance to digest it. We just can't seem to manage with it. Let me say this to you.
But don't you know that by doing that, we are both declaring that we're racist?
No, we're not, because I happen to be of a Sicilian ancestry, and they shut off immigration to Sicily right after World War I for over 50 years. We said, we got enough of you guys here, and that's the end of it. Right. And because they needed the...
No, look, I'm with you. I agree. I think
this happens to every ethnic group.
It's a very simple way to just...
It's necessary, Paul.
What they do, they throw pejoratives at you to discredit your theory, because the theory is a good one and they don't have any defense for it.
Well, it's really not a theory, it's a reality. I want to get back to Revere for 1 second and Chelsea. You are correct in this sense, is that the proportion of students to their population is about half that of Lynn.
Right, that was the point I was making, right?
So on that basis, you're correct.
Right, and then his second question was about what would happen if all of the parochial school closed. What would that do for the city of Lynn? And in theory, it could potentially be a huge problem. Now, what I would say is if people have the desire to send their kids to private school, they'll find another private school to send them to. So I think that the greater impact on private school versus public school would be if we were in some type of recession or depression where families couldn't afford to send their kids to private school. That's probably the bigger issue.
Why do we have a large percentage of our student body, eligible student body, going to St. Mary's, St. John's Prep, and Bishop Fenwick? Why?
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of prominent people, you'd be surprised at some of the prominent people who rah about public schools but refuse to send their kids there.
You could name a number of them, couldn't you?
Yes, you could.
All right.
I was one of them.
All right. Why? Why do people do that, Paul?
I'll tell you the reason I did it was because I went to a parochial school and I thought I got a good education and I thought it was worth doing.
And why did you get a better education at parochial school, Paul?
It was more discipline, I think, in the classroom.
So they didn't tolerate. If you were out of line, what happened? They threw you out. Right?
No, they cracked me over the knuckles with a rule. That was usually good enough.
Can't do that today. KIPP Academy is succeeding from the vantage point that it's like an exam school. They have the ability to throw you out.
Right.
So therefore they have control. Unfortunately, public schools don't have that luxury.
Right.
And you're right. The Lynn Public Schools does a marvelous job, and I'm hoping the new superintendent is able to carry on with the tradition that Lynn has been famous for, right. And that's
managing a very difficult situation year in and year out.
Certainly is, particularly with the budget being what it is. We'll get to that right after we take this break, because he is absolutely correct, the caller, on the fact that the whole budget in the city of Lynn is predicated on the school budget. That's what's more than any other single item in the budget.
Can I talk about the funding of the pension and the health insurance?
We're going to get to that part. We're going to run through everything and get to that. That's the second half of our show totally.
Okay.
Okay? We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back. Our number here is 781-780-9460. We invite your calls. Great ones, by the way.
49 million Americans struggle to put food on the table. More than 1 in 5 children are at risk of hunger. Among African Americans and Latinos, it's 1 in 3.
40% of food is thrown out in the U.S. every year, or about $165 billion worth. All of this uneaten food could feed 25 million Americans. If you or someone you know is struggling with hunger, please visit My Brother's Table at 98 Willow Street.
We're back. I'm talking to you, Paul, and I didn't realize that we're back already. I want to go back to what Ralph did, and he has a point, because he's talking about, he's all for building houses, which is important, but he's also saying we're missing a point here. We're missing the point that places have closed down, Paul. Garlic Farms last week, I believe the Porthole Pub closed down, Linway Bowling, which you know about, closed down. 3 different businesses. Now, that's 400 jobs, Paul, and that's being fairly conservative. So, it's all good and well, but we got to do something to create jobs in the city also. And you don't create jobs if people are sleeping.
No, that's right. So if you made it strictly a bedroom community, it would be a very difficult thing
exactly.
to generate any income. You need these things, One of the things that I am most excited about is not the Linway, really. It's the downtown. I mean, they're putting in there's some new developments going in. The old Security Trust National Bank it's going to be, it's already condos or apartments on the upper floors, and then they have like a
commercial
craft brewery and a restaurant on the first floor.
That employs people.
Yep. And it brings people to the downtown.
It does. Commerce.
Not because right now there's only a few natural draws to the downtown. It would be the auditorium and restaurants, right? But if you have something like a craft brewery where people go there, it's not just a place to go and drink. It's really a destination, and it's a form of entertainment. And I think,
but that's the whole idea of having, Lynn Shore tours. Same idea. If you get positive activity, we underutilize Lynn Woods. People don't even realize how many bikers come up there, mountain bikers, and they have races and stuff like that. So it's ironic that people from outside of Lynn know more about Lynn Woods than the people who live in Lynn.
Gets a lot of play up there. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a wonderful golf course. If you integrate a lot of the activities, the swan boats on a hot summer evening, it's got to be great if they lit up the pond. You want to talk about walls, light-lidded walls. How about if you lit our waterways, with the different colors and stuff? Give Lynn Winnipesaukee credit for opening up and making a delightful place to eat and with a great environment.
Right, where people actually can take their boat to the restaurant.
Absolutely. That's imagination. Exactly. Yeah. And if we have that type of thinking, then we're ahead of the game. Now, Malcolm, if we can get this up, Malcolm Mitchell says that under the presidency of Councilor Sayre, a progressive city council, we are seeing a city, as Sayre has stated, on the cusp of great development. And the question I ask you, Paul, and for you folks out there, is Lynn on the cusp of great development? It probably is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's on the move.
And I'm not going to take credit away from Darren in this progressive city council, but I think it's more a reflection of the community at large.
The council is now starting to reflect the community because the community is demanding that the council respond. Right. Would you say?
Yeah, a little bit. Yep.
Yeah. So this and I don't want to look, folks. Some of the times I kid around with it, but let me get serious a little bit. The more shows that we have, like this one, American Dream, and our sister show, and what they're trying to do here at Lynn TV to get information out to the people makes them more engaged. And I have to give a lot of credit to. You remember that gal Lisa I ran into today? That she's a community activist up about opiates and drug addiction, all that type of stuff. She, people like her, and even though I may disagree with Isaac, is it Isaac?
Isaac Holt.
Yeah, I may disagree, but he's trying to do the right thing. Dave Gass,
Right.
And these types of people bring awareness to the city.
Yep.
And that's a positive thing. And the more, what's their interest? To making the city worse?
No. At the end of the day, I think that you can go down the list of anybody who is active in the city of Lynn, or in any community for that matter. And it's very rare that you will find that they have a malicious intent. They don't.
Now, you know Janie Kale,
Yep.
Janie Kale's mom? I mean, that woman works overtime to keep that Lynn Shore Drive the way it is, and it is gorgeous.
Right.
And give Bob Tucker credit.
Yep. All what they do from the Friends of
Sure.
Lynn and Nahant Beach. Yep.
And I'm gonna throw a nice bouquet to my dear friend Charlie Gator, and that he's trying to make the city look better.
Yeah. Doing
and that's
that
it.
project down on Sagamore Hill. And
Who's that fellow? You weren't here. Is it Whedon that was?
Jeff Wheaton.
Now, here's a fascinating thing. There's a subtlety involved here. He's talking 20, 30 years downstream, right? He's not talking about tomorrow. He's talking about a slow process. In that slow process, Paul, what happens is you're able to cull some real bad housing stock out of the city that's detrimental. It takes time to do that. You can't just nilly-willy go down and knock down all of these, 16 family jobs.
Right. You look at there was a story in the paper just the other day about they were breaking ground for all of those parking lots over in West Lynn that were part of the GE that are going to be now developed by Lynn Housing and Neighborhood Development, Elhand.
Isn't McGrath going to do something out there in West Lynn? He's got a project going there too.
He may.
What about
he's the one that bought the
Porthole Park.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's going to be. Yeah. Now, here's the other thing: does Lynn, or is the economy such that we can command $2,500 a month rent? Because you're going to have to, and that's low compared to Boston.
I would say that there's. People would be paying $2,500 a month for certain units. If you say that it's a 3-bedroom, part of a 3-family tenement on let's say Essex Street, no. But if you have penthouse at let's say 200 Lynn Shore Drive or 200 the Linway, very different, right? So
Paul,
what are the 3 most important things about real estate? Location, location, location.
Yeah, that's an axiom this time memorial. But the Lynn Shore Drive, no matter how many times I've gone up and down it, is as beautiful as it's always been.
Right.
So, there are sections of Lynn that are just spectacular. Now what I understand is a lot of people are gentrifying up in the Highlands because there was terrific housing stock up there in the past. No pre-air conditioning.
Right.
People went up there.
I would argue that there was a time when the titans of Lynn, that's where they lived, right?
Right.
And on the Commons.
Commons, off the Commons is wonderful. Caller, how are you this evening? Hello?
Hey,
how are you? Same guy.
all this talk about $2,500 rentals and everything is all very charming. But what about the people that have lived here in West Lynn all their lives, and right a house in back of me on Murray Street, I just read in the item. It's been there for years. I've known all the people that lived in there. What about us that are making less than $10,000 a year, trying to keep our homes? Never mind these buildings that are coming in and that you're going to get big rents for. What about us here and now?
Good question. I mean, and that,
That's a different question, though, entirely, right?
Not necessarily.
You asked me,
Go ahead.
can the city of Lynn support $2,500 a month rent? And I said that in some areas, yes. But
Yes,
that doesn't answer the question, what
but
do we
at the
do about
same
these
time-
areas where it's down and they can't get that kind of rent?
But I like to call from this vantage point. A person's worked all his life, General Electric or wherever.
Yep.
General Electric is no longer here. And, that pension...
Most GE workers live in New Hampshire, though, or up
Well,
north.
because they got wives.
Right.
That's why. They worked hard and they said, wait a second, what am I staying here out of my mind? Bingo. Up there, they don't have any sales tax. Plus, all of the Massachusetts people are polluting southern New Hampshire. the politics up there has changed dramatically as a consequence, and the state is not as.
But you were saying about
What I'm saying is that you take a and I'm speaking from my own personal bias. Retired. Your income does not expand when you're retired. As a matter of fact, if you live long enough, you're going to go broke.
It generally contracts.
That's an axiom.
Right.
And so when I have to come up with $1,500 next week on my real estate tax to pay for the schools that the gentleman was talking about earlier, that's a little hard to swallow when I was paying $1,200 3 years ago. So I got a $300 hit per quarter, and then they're going to say, oh, by the way, we're going to give you a trash fee that I never had before. That was built into my real estate tax, right? But now they decided to separate that. Oh, but because you're a senior citizen over 69, we're going to knock down a little bit.
Give you a little discount.
I consider that somewhat unfair. But the thing that bothers me more than anything else is all of these different little nickels and dime jobs they're doing. For example, the Lynn Water Sewer Commission, of which I was the founding father way back when.
You were.
Was nothing more than a huge tax increase on the citizens of the city of Lynn. So they created a utility in which they had a commodity, otherwise known as water, which everybody needs, that they had to pay for. And then they jacked up sewer on top of it, right? Because they said, you use the water, you got to get rid of the water. They never thought about evaporation, all right? So you get charged as if every bit of water that you consume goes back into the system, which is not the case.
Right.
All right? So what happens is you get ripped off there, and that increased your taxes. The average person probably pays, I don't know, $100 a quarter. Does that sound about right? $400 a year, $500 a year for water sewer?
A little more, I think.
Maybe more than that. So that's added onto your tax base. In the earlier times, when someone was working at GE, when the GE was booming, all of that, trash collection, water, sewer, all of that stuff was covered under one bill called the real estate tax. So the politicians have turned around and have created all these different
and
revenue sources.
Just the creation of the fee is like one of the more frustrating things. The only thing more frustrating than a fee, because frankly what they're saying is they're calling it they're not calling it a tax when it is. And the other part of it is, I used to always get frustrated by the very definition of the term excise tax is a temporary tax.
Yeah.
And excise taxes have never been temporary.
No, never.
Right. So, and they're always trying to disguise it. I remember a few years back, do you remember when the state of Massachusetts tried to institute a gas tax that would be adjusted every year for inflation?
Sure. But it never goes the opposite way.
No.
It never goes on a deflation. Just like your real estate taxes. When you had the crunch, when the real estate market went this way, I didn't pay any less.
No.
So, these folks out here, we're up against the fiscal year shortly, as you well know. And when we get to the last segment of the show, it's all about happy fiscal year. And I don't know how happy this fiscal year is going to be, Paul. I really worry about everything you outlined earlier in the show about.
Right. And we do need to talk about you had talked about the number one cost to the city is the school system.
It is, and
there's a sneaky number two that people don't even know about. Well, they know about it, but they don't really count it in the equation.
The health care?
The unfunded pension and health care liability.
That's right. That's a good point. So that's basically, the number here, by the way, is 781-780-9460. We're trying to get as much information out to you folks as possible. In our last segment, we're going to be covering the happy fiscal new year, along with a bit of hypocrisy and double standard that I think we ought to talk about. We have to talk about because it's really plaguing our society from a quality perspective, Paul.
Sure
it's very difficult to navigate.
So can I say that Donald Trump did not invent the pejorative or the wisecrack or the insult, right? He didn't create it. The system that we have in place created Donald Trump.
Paul, the Obama administration got away with you can't believe because they didn't report it. They protected. Eric Holder was in Obama's pocket. Bobby Kennedy was the president's brother. And all that, and so Trump says this guy Sessions, he's working against me when I try to help him out. He's absolutely correct.
Right.
Your attorney general should be on the same page as you.
Right.
And protect your interests. He doesn't have that luxury, and he's got the entire media crushing him every single day, and yet his numbers are going up. Explain that to me. And they use the word racist on him if he opens his mouth.
All right. Oh, he was branded that right from the very beginning. And, and all he is just a guy who just speaks from the hip,
Paul, you remember he had the generals in the American Football League, Herschel Walker and Doug Flutie and all those guys. I mean, he has been very helpful to a lot of black athletes throughout his career. Rodman's one of his buddies.
Look, you cannot say that somebody is a racist simply because they want to protect the borders. And
That's
because
true.
they've said things about, that some of the people coming from Mexico are...
We got a hard break, Paul. We'll get back. Folks, we'll be back in a sec.
Controlling and isolation, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, threats, and blaming are all types of domestic violence. Boys who witness domestic violence are 3 times likely to become a batterer. 1 in 3 women experience domestic violence. 26% of teenagers reported 2 to 4 million women are battered each year. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, call 800-799-7233 or go to thehotline.org.
Hey, we're back. Paul, you said something beforehand about how they called Trump a racist because he came down and he talked about that some Mexicans that are coming here and some folks from Central America are not necessarily nice people coming here legally. Well, people say that's a racist comment, but I hate to tell people that being Mexicans is not a race. El Salvador is not a race.
But
you get what I mean?
Right. But that's really not even the point. I mean, the intent of the statement, he's a racist, is to say that his only motivation for not wanting them in here is he doesn't like those people.
That's what they're trying to imply. But that isn't what he
that's
said
right.
at all.
They're stating
wait,
emphatically.
What about he called the MS-13 animals? Was he talking about all? Or was he just talking about that narrow sliver?
Of course.
Responding to a question. They extrapolated. They built it up to be something awful.
Right.
We'll get to this in a second. I want to finish up. Let's do this and we'll get to double standard. Happy fiscal New Year, Paul, which is July 1st. And as you can see, our expenses are weighing down our budget pretty badly. And you notice on the right there, isn't that a healthcare cost you were talking about?
Yep.
All right. So we have a projected $7 million budgetary shortfall. That's number one. Right off the get-go. It's July 1st. That's the fiscal year, correct?
Right.
All right. We have a 10%, and that's conservative, 10% higher real estate property tax. Is that accurate? Or is it better?
My bill went up at least 10%.
At least. Okay.
Although my commercial taxes went down.
Yeah, but there isn't that much commercial. And I'm not in the commercial business. I'm interested in real estate tax. And then we slap with a trash fee that we never had before. And we have soaring health care costs. You can't deny that. And we have rising pension costs, union contracts, and wages that have to be dealt with. So you tell me, how is that a happy fiscal situation?
Okay, so first thing is I think I'm going to be correcting a statement that I saw in the paper that the health care cost for the city of Lynn is $40-something million. Did you see that?
Yes, it went up by $3 million.
Right. Okay.
6.5%.
If health care alone is $40-something million, that means it's 15% of the budget. 15.
Okay.
15% of the budget.
Yeah.
All right. When I was on the city council, the budget was about $250 million, and total employer pension and health care costs combined were $25 million,
10%.
which was 10%. So if pension and health care were 10% 7 years ago, and now just health care is 15%, add to that the pension out of control.
Well,
That's not the case. So I would argue that $45 billion is actually pension and healthcare combined, and with that, so the percentage of the budget, it's eating away the ability to use nominal dollars, revenue coming in today, to fund things that aren't going to happen for a long time to come.
Well, let me ask you this: what percentage of the budget is schools?
More than half.
More than half.
Right.
You went down ancient history about when you were on the city council.
Yep.
I was the first chairman of the education subcommittee. You know what the school budget was when I was on the city council?
What's that?
$25 million.
Right. Well, I mean.
What is it now, Paul?
If it's maybe 160, 170, something
Well,
like that.
everything combined is about 230. So we're talking about an 8-fold increase, exponentially.
So what's the total budget for the city of Lynn?
Probably about 3.
Yeah. All right.
And the school, you said the school's about 50%, which is about right when you add everything.
Right.
Okay? So essentially, the school budget is balloons way out of control.
Right.
So the real issue, you got to put the harness on that first, then you got to work on, because we did a show with Brenna's son, who was working on the pension, and it is now about 50% fully funded, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And a few more.
We're talking about Gary.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's doing a great job of fully funding
with
it.
the stock market up,
Yeah.
you're going to get that. You're going to get it. That's what you need.
By the way, who do you give credit to that for? Was that under Obama or under
Donald Trump?
So who are the beneficiaries?
Right. But by the way, when they say that only big business benefits when you reduce corporate taxes, that's not true, because the value of all the companies that are in those pensions goes up because of it's not just big business. It's your pension, my 401k plan. They all go up in value because we own those companies that are doing well.
Well, let's talk about double standards.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
So I just want, this is really important. $45 million out of a $300 million or $200 million budget, or 15%, does not go to operating the city.
Yeah, I know.
It goes to funding something unrelated. People that are already retired, people that are and are collecting their pensions. So, and that number in the past 7 years has grown by 50%, from 10% of the budget to 15% of the budget.
What do you think's happened to the federal level, Paul? Same thing.
It's across the board, and
That's
right.
right.
You know what? So there's two things that are going to kill us: is this unfunded liability nationwide,
Yep,
and it's also the fact that everything is built on a house of credit
So
cards.
what's the only solution to the problem? One of the solution to the problem is growth, increasing the gross national product. Right? If you grow at 3 or 4 to 5% per year, you're going to be able to.
You can start getting the tax.
You can start chopping it down,
right?
Which is precisely what is happening now. Under the Obama years, it never, ever, ever had a quarter at 3%. First time in the history of the United States. Never a quarter. So his economic policies were counterproductive.
Right.
Yet he spent like a drunken sailor.
Right.
Okay? So, let me get to the double standard and hypocrisy of the whole thing. The truth of the matter is, friend, that you mentioned about big business. Well, big business doesn't particularly like Donald Trump. Silicon Valley hates him.
Right.
Whether it's Google, whether it's Apple, whether it's technology, they don't like him at all. They love the old Democrats. Oh, they were right up Hillary's pocket. So this notion that big business and the Republican Party are joined at the hip is not true.
Right. It's really that and I think there's a quote from the Bible about this, and I can't remember what it is, but basically it says when business and government conspire together, they create a very negative scenario for the people that live in the country.
Exactly. A true liberal libertarian can't stand privilege. Does not like big business. It's populist. The popular guys, Huey Long, who was a Democrat, and Donald Trump, who was whoever. In fact, John Boehner said in the paper that the Republican Party is no longer the Republican Party. It's not the party of Trump, which is true.
Right.
Because the Republican Party was no different than the Democratic Party. Trump is different. And people are starting to realize that. And if
different in a good way.
Everybody's benefiting from it, Paul. Everybody is, and they won't even talk about it. Double standard. We got 2 minutes. Very quick to end the show. Roseanne Barr says something despicable, and rightfully so gets nailed to the cross for it. At the same token, Samantha Bee says something equally, if not worse, than what Roseanne Barr said.
The only difference
about
was
Ivanka Trump.
It was a liberal speaking about a conservative versus a conservative.
So she apologizes, and the network says that's fine. Roseanne Barr apologizes. See you later. Means don't do it. Now listen, I don't justify either one of them, but what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Right. And the other thing that if you commit a murder, right, and you get found guilty of that murder, a first-degree murder, let's say, you go to jail for a very long time. Your life is over, for all intents and purposes. It gets ruined. They ruin your life for something that you did that was very egregious. Compare something like that to a statement, which was very badly. It was a poor choice of words. It was a terrible thing to do. They want to ruin not just Roseanne Barr's career, but all of the people that were associated with that show. The other actors, all the production people, all of those people are out of work because of the moral of the whole thing. When I think that clearly, an apology was appropriate and so forth, and she did. I mean, her apology was like the most sincere, full-blown apology that I've ever heard, and they doesn't count. You're conservative. You like Trump.
She's not even conservative. I mean, that's what kills me. She's progressive. So it's because of other things. But we are plumb out of time. You folks have a terrific week, and we'll be back same time, same station, and keep those comments coming.